What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we'll be going over the running backs I'd be trading for and away this week. You can see a complete list of players I'd be trading for and away, along with my rest of season rankings, so you can try and make the best trades possible, all at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So we will get into the running back trade targets in a second, but first, of course, have to start things off as usual, the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was through Sunday, just one quarterback had one or fewer interceptions on over 150 pass attempts. The answer is actually Daniel Jones, and Joseph Goodry was the first to get that right on YouTube, and at Elrish757 was the first to get it right on Twitter. Today's stat: what running back has somehow fumbled 4 times already this season and has yet to lose any of them? No other player has more than 2 fumbles. This person's fumbled 4 times. This running back, yet to lose one. All right, so last week we talked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mike Davis, Chris Carson, and Zeke, with the caveat being for Zeke, you have to be deep at running back. You have to be trying to find or to fill, I guess, a hole at another position, and you've got to be getting a lot back in return. Those were the sell highs last week. I stand behind all these again, although, obviously Clyde gets hurt, Carson's hurt now, so obviously both of those guys, this is not the ideal time to be trading away Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you didn't do it last week, you're getting a lot less this week, so it's probably not the best time to do it. You probably want to wait for those guys to get healthy before trying to trade them away again. Mike Davis had a decent game. He had 61 yards, scored the touchdown, finished as running back 26 on the week in half PPR scoring. But we went over yesterday how I really just do not like his long-term value, and I do still think he's a great player to be selling right now, since there are plenty of teams, that really need help at the running back position, so I still think he's a sell high. New names this week, we're putting Damien Harris right back at the top of the list. If you haven't sold Damien Harris yet, I don't know what you're doing, especially after scoring that touchdown the last week. But, I've gone over him a ton, so I'll keep this under 30 seconds on Harris, and we'll move on to some new players. But he fumbled in now 2 high leverage spots. He has remained very inefficient. His job is just not as secure as people think it is. And even while he's the starter, he's a 0 in the passing game, so he needs multiple scores to be even worth starting. If he scores 1 touchdown, he is probably still not worth starting. He needs multiple touchdowns to be worth it. Those aren't the players you want, so we got to be trading him away. Next, I want to mention Antonio Gibson in this spot. I've had a lot of people reach out asking if they should be selling, or reached out last week asking if they should be selling when that injury news dropped. And my response then was that whenever we're in these situations, it's never ideal to have a stud player who's performing fine, definitely underperforming. Then injury news comes out. That is not the situation you ever want to start selling a player, right? Because their value is low. Now there's new injury news that, they were talking about how it's going to impact him for the entire season. That is not the time you sell. Then he comes out. He has a pretty good game last week. And so if you're someone who is scared about this injury and hasn't really been pleased with his production so far, this now would be a better opportunity to move on, because now people saw the news come out, but then they saw him have, a 2-touchdown game, a little bit involved in the receiving game, 20 carries. They're like, oh, okay, this is fine. Now I'm fine trading for Gibson. So this would be the part where if you wanted to trade him, now would be the time to do so. But I'll say this. He's running back 13 on the season, so not exactly a bust so far. And he set a career high in snaps played last week. He tied his career high with the 20 carries. And so it is entirely possible that this injury news is a little bit overblown for how it's going to impact him moving forward, right? Maybe people were being a little bit, I don't want to say fear-mongering, but a little bit too scared, a little bit hyping up this injury, because if it was a really bad injury, he's not setting a career high in snap count. He's not setting or tying a career high in carries, right? So the injury is probably not that bad. Again, now is still the time you would sell him. I don't think you need to, but I know some of you don't like his production, so you can. Honestly, the only other name that I can come up with as a sell high this week, Nothing crazy happened this week. Most of the players that performed well or supposed to perform well aren't players we're trying to sell, especially the running back position. So the only other name I can come up with is Kareem Hunt. Hunt is right now the running back 5 in half PPR, and while he's extremely valuable, like he's a running back 2, right? He's obviously not a top 5 running back. And so it's entirely possible that you drafted Kareem Hunt after drafting, running back in like the first and the third round, or the first and the second round, and maybe you hit on both those 2 running backs. Maybe you took, I don't know, Derrick Henry and DeAndre Swift. Okay, that's entirely possible. You started off with that in the first and the third round. And so maybe you're looking at this Kareem Hunt and you're like, okay, I keep playing him in the flex. Like, obviously that's been fantastic so far, but he's more valuable if you can use him at a running back spot because it's more difficult to fill running back spots. And so to someone else, he might be significantly more valuable than he is to you. And you can use that to leverage a trade into a position you aren't really good at. Because, if you hit on 2 running backs and Kareem Hunt, it's pretty likely you're not strong at every single other spot, right? Or else you're probably not watching this video. You're good in the trade market, right? So are you weak at tight end? Are you weak at quarterback? Are you weak at wide receiver? Can you leverage some really, really nice weeks in a row from Kareem Hunt into someone else's running back 2, and you can get an upgrade somewhere else? That's how I would treat Kareem Hunt right now. And again, I would only do it if you're not relying on him as a running back 2, because he's a very, very, very good and secure running back 2. So if you need him at running back 2, you're not the person who's selling Kareem Hunt. It's the people who are playing him in the flex. He's their like 3rd or 4th best running back. Those are the people who should try and be trading him away. But on to running backs we can trade for. Now, last week we talked about Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Elijah Mitchell, Michael Carter, Zach Moss, and Javonte Williams. Obviously, we see Jonathan Taylor explode. DeAndre Swift has a great week. Those are 2 names that you can't really include anymore as trade targets because they went off. So you don't really want to be trading for players after they go off. I still think Michael Carter, Elijah Mitchell, Moss, and Williams are great buys. Mitchell, I would guess, I guess, I don't know for sure, but I would guess he's the cheapest among this grouping. Maybe you could say Michael Carter is in there, but I think Mitchell is a little bit cheaper. So if you're on a budget, I guess he's the one I'd go after. If you're like, Nick, I need the cheapest running back 2 you can possibly imagine, it's probably Mitchell, then Carter, then Moss, then Williams. Williams is probably going to cost you the most, but Williams is also the one on this list that has the most long-term upside. Like, he's the guy that, to end the season, we think can be getting, 65, 70% of the touches for Denver on a pretty good offense, especially when Judy comes back. Good touchdown upside, good reception upside. So he's probably the most expensive on this list. But as far as new names this week, let's start off with Darrell Henderson. I know the snap share wasn't super high last week. It was just 66%. We see Sony Michel mix in for about 12 touches. He scores a touchdown. But almost all of that work came on one drive. It was kind of weird to watch. You see Sony Michel enter the game, and it's like carry, 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 target, carry. It's just like every single play, it was going to Sony Michel, and he scores a touchdown. It was like the drive of Sony, but 10 of his 12 touches come in that one drive. And honestly, Henderson is the vastly superior running back. Anyone watching these games knows that Henderson is so much better than Sony Michel. And where the real upside comes is not in these games where he's getting 65% of the snaps, right? But we've already seen 2 weeks now where Henderson has played at least 90% of the snaps. And so we know they're willing to feature him when he's healthy. And not many running backs will ever even approach 80% of the snaps. So having one on the Rams, mind you, like a really, really good offense, capable of pushing a 90% snap share, I mean, that's insane. And if we look at his upcoming schedule, this is probably the last time you're going to be able to buy him. He plays the Giants, then the Lions, the Texans, and the Titans. Those are games that the Rams are going to win. Those are games where they're going to be leading. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns. And so very high touchdown upside, very high touch upside. And he's going to be successful in probably all these weeks. I would say at Giants, his first week is the most difficult matchup, but oh my goodness. Versus the Lions, at the Texans, versus the Titans, yeah, you're not going to be able to trade for Darrell Henderson after those weeks. And so if you want to be getting someone, again, who's capable of pushing a 90% snap share on one of the best offenses in football, it's Henderson. I honestly think after this 4-week stretch is done, he could be, a top 7 running back. And if he gets lucky with touchdowns, he could be a top 5 running back after this happens. So you've got to treat him as such in the trade market. I think I would say he's worth in that like running back 10 to 15 range. That's kind of the value that he provides. Another running back I want to mention, but I haven't like formed a final take on, is Josh Jacobs. So here are like my thoughts on him, and you can kind of decide what you want to do. Jacobs he's not the mold of running back that we want, right? He's very game script dependent. He's touchdown dependent. Until these last 2 weeks, he has no receiving upside, and the offense isn't that good, right? You can make up for that if the offense is elite. The Raiders don't have an elite offense. But to this point, Drake hasn't been much of a factor, right? And obviously, Peyton Barber is bad. And surprisingly, like I alluded to, we've got the 10 targets. I believe it's 9 receptions on 10 targets. Don't quote me on that, but it's 10 targets over these last 2 weeks, even while playing through the toe injury. So they're starting to involve Jacobs in the receiving game. And he's been bad, all season, but he's played the Ravens, he's played the Chargers, the Bears, all really strong defenses. Now, I'm not like pumped to own him. That's why I say like I'm going to give you some information and you can kind of decide what to do with it. Again, he's not the mold of running back that we want in fantasy, and so I'm not super excited to send trade offers for him. And he plays Denver this week. I would send out an offer because look at his game logs. He's been trash this season. He's been really, really bad. Send a trade offer that is clearly in your favor. Like not even close. If they hit accept, you need to jump up and down and be like, oh my goodness, I don't like Jacobs, but this is insane. This is great value for running back, right? It's going to get rejected. We know it's going to get rejected. But then when he tanks against the Broncos this week, he's going to have a bad game. Now send one that's still in your favor, but is much better, right? So one that you could actually see getting accepted. This week, don't send one you expect to get accepted. Next week is when we send the real offer. When he has another bad game, when we're in the back of the minds of the Josh Jacobs owner, and he's just even more furious that he hasn't, maybe he doesn't eclipse 50 yards like again this next week. Maybe he doesn't have many receptions. He's going to be furious, right? They're not going to want him anymore. Now you send the good offer. And now we acquire him for cheap. So that's what I would do with Jacobs personally. But again, I understand being hesitant with it because he's not a guy we've ever really wanted. I just think his value is so low right now. We have such an opportunity with them playing Denver this week. I think we got to capitalize on that. The final running back I want to go over today is a duo, and that's Dalvin Cook, McCaffrey, and then just like the idea of elite running back who's injured. What do we do? Especially this time of the season. So I touched on this idea yesterday, but I've gotten like a lot of questions, surrounding both Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey. And so I want to go a full take here and a full, this is what we do in this sort of situation. Now, very, very few players are capable of posting 30 plus fantasy points in a week, even like 10% of the time, right? Some guys can luck into like a few touchdowns. Some guys can luck into only having 10 touches, but 2 deep touchdowns. Maybe you're playing a league with like 100-yard bonus. They can get to 30 points. But the list of players who can drop 40 points, even at all, even with bonuses, even getting lucky, is very, very short. That's why, these two running backs were a unanimous top 3 pick in pretty much any scoring format. And it's why these high-end running backs always just shatter wins above replacement metrics at the end of the season, and why you always see championship teams have one of these headline running backs. Now, we see both of these running backs get hurt to start the season, and so the people who drafted them, of course, had to do it with probably a top 3 pick. So their next pick for a lot of these weeks is, the second and the third round, and that's obviously made them weaker, and it's very likely that these teams who started off with McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook to begin the draft had a slow start. It's very likely that happened. And judging by how many questions I've been getting, they're considered trading them away. I know that people like to comment in these videos. They're like, Nick, no one's trading away McCaffrey. No one's trading away Dalvin Cook. You haven't seen my mentions. You have not seen how many owners of these two players are extremely concerned extremely aggravated, and don't know what to do if they're like 1-4, 0-5, and they're very, very willing to give these players up. So if you look at your league and the Dalvin Cook owner, the McCaffrey owner has 0, 1, 2 wins, maybe we're leaning towards that 0-1. That's when we can really get good deals. But even if they're 2-3, you basically need to send a trade offer. You know, the most likely trade that'll get done in this particular circumstance, since Cook and McCaffrey owners, they're likely most upset with the fact that they took them early. They don't have as many elite players behind them, and so they're annoyed with their depth. They're annoyed that they were relying on these two as like their anchor. Maybe they went anchor running back, and they don't have enough depth behind it. So if you offer them another high-end running back to replace one of these two that's healthy right now, and then 1 to 2 pieces around that, then that's much more likely to get accepted. Because they're going to look at that and they're going to say, okay, I still get and I'm saying you can't offer them like a running back 3. Like you have to offer them probably like a low-end 1 to a high-end 2 as the running back. Then 1 to 2 starting pieces. This is not bench options. Like we need to send offers that are realistic, right? These are very, very high-end players. They provide huge edges to your team. Everyone knows that, right? So we're still sending good offers for this one. But these 1 to 2 players, we also need to consider we're going to get replacements for them, right, on free agency. And so if you send out, a low-end 1 and then like 2 flex options, maybe at wide receiver, if you're deep at wide receiver, maybe you picked up Knox and you're able to already have your tight end. You can throw Knox in there as your backup. That adds to the deal. Things like that. Maybe you took a backup quarterback. Maybe one of your defense is going off. Those are probably less realistic, but the point is, wherever the depth is on your particular team, everyone's got a depth somewhere, use it. Okay, maybe Kareem Hunt is a player that you can use in this deal. But in this deal, you're giving away a pretty good running back, 2 other options. You're gaining Dalvin Cook, you're gaining Christian McCaffrey, and you're gaining 2 open roster spots that you can use for free agency. And that's another tip with trading. Look at your free agency list. If you are in a league that is, I would say, less competitive, even like a smaller league, a 10-team league, an 8-team league, some 12-team leagues where people aren't as active, and you look at free agency and you're like, there's so many good players, but I don't even know, I don't know who to drop. I love my bench, but there's really good options in free agency. You can send trade offers that honestly aren't even really in your favor, but you're getting the best player and you're losing extra people. You're gaining that roster spot. So if you do this 3-for-1 trade and it looks like you're giving up a bunch, but you look on free agency and there's a ton of dudes that you still really want, well, now pretend like you're adding them to that trade and that trade looks a lot more appealing. So that is a long way of saying trade for Dalvin Cook, trade for Christian McCaffrey. And if this sort of situation happens towards the end of the season where someone like Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, I guess this Saquon injury as well, you can kind of throw him into that mix as well, although I'll say Saquon wasn't like the same level of like McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. But the point is, when these situations arise, you need to look at these injuries, understand if they're long-term, understand the trajectory of your team, understand you're trying to win a championship, and you're trying to set yourself up for the best chance to win at the end of the season, not necessarily right now. And if you look at the people who own these players, and they're struggling right now, and you're doing perfectly fine, you got to be sending offers for these players. That's how you build a championship team. So that'll do it for this week's running back trade video. I'll be posting a bunch more names on the website, so make sure you check that out if you want more running backs, tight ends, quarterbacks, wide receivers, all the different positions. Again, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. And you can also just look at the rest of the season rankings. You want to upgrade wide receiver? Well, pick wide receivers who are ranked higher in the rest of the season rankings. Those are the players I'll be trading for the players ranked below them. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.